Ryan was 28 years old, but already he carried the kind of bitterness most people didn't find until much later in life. He worked long hours at a job that barely paid his bills, lived alone in a cramped apartment, and every day he felt like people were selfish, fake, and only looked out for themselves. One Friday evening, Ryan sat in a noisy sports bar with his buddy, Chris. As laughter and conversations buzzed all around them, Chris leaned across the table and asked, "Man, why are you always so negative about people? Not everyone's out to get you." Ryan scoffed, shaking his head as he sipped from his glass. "You don't get it, Chris. Kindness is fake. People only do nice things when it benefits them. Nobody actually cares. They'll smile at you one second, then turn their back the next." Chris frowned. "That's not true. I've seen people help strangers all the time. You're just too cynical to notice." But Ryan leaned in, his eyes sharp with determination. "You really think strangers care? You really think kindness is real? I'll prove to you it's not. I'll test it myself. I'll put people in situations and watch how they react. You'll see they're not kind. They're just pretending." Chris shook his head and muttered, "Man, you're setting yourself up for something you're not ready for." But Ryan wasn't listening. He felt almost excited. He was convinced that by proving his theory, he'd finally show the world he was right. That people weren't naturally good, they were selfish at their core. As Ryan left the bar that night, the city lights flickered above him, the cool night breeze brushing against his face. He muttered to himself, "Let's see just how fake people really are." But Ryan had no idea that the game he was about to play with kindness would soon backfire in ways he could never imagine. What exactly would Ryan do to test people's kindness? And how would strangers respond when they thought someone truly needed help? The next morning, Ryan woke up with a mission. He wanted to prove his point, not just to Chris, but to himself. He wanted to show that people's so-called kindness was nothing more than a performance, something they put on to feel good about themselves or to look good in front of others. So he planned out his first experiment. That afternoon, he walked into a busy cafe downtown. The warm smell of coffee beans filled the air, and the soft hum of chatter surrounded him. He stood in line, glancing at the people waiting to order. A young woman in scrubs, clearly on her lunch break. An older gentleman reading the paper on his phone. A college kid with earbuds, tapping his foot to some unheard rhythm. Ryan smirked. Perfect test subjects, he thought. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the cashier and ordered a sandwich and a large iced latte. As the cashier rang it up, Ryan casually patted his jeans pocket, pretending to search for something. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, he said, "Oh no, I must have left my wallet at home." The cashier looked annoyed, ready to cancel the order. But before she could say anything, the woman in scrubs gently tapped Ryan's shoulder. "Don't worry about it, I've got you," she said warmly, handing her card to the cashier. Ryan forced a sheepish smile. "Wow, thank you so much. That's really kind of you." The woman just shrugged, smiled, and said, "Hey, it happens to all of us. Pay it forward someday, okay?" But instead of being touched, Ryan chuckled to himself as he sat down with his food. In his head, he muttered, "See? People only help because they want to feel like a hero." She just wanted her good deed moment for the day. Later that week, Ryan tried again. This time, he walked out of a grocery store with a bag full of cheap items, bread, milk, and apples. He purposely loosened his grip and let the bag slip from his hands, sending apples rolling across the parking lot. Immediately, a teenager jogging past bent down and started picking them up. "Here you go, sir," the kid said with a grin, handing him back the groceries. "Thanks," Ryan muttered, barely making eye contact. As soon as the teen walked away, Ryan smirked. What a gullible kid. He didn't even hesitate. And then came the third test. Ryan stopped strangers on the street, pretending to be lost. "Excuse me," he'd say, "can you tell me how to get to Main Street?" Even though he knew the area like the back of his hand. Most people paused, smiled politely, and gave him directions. One elderly man even walked with him half a block to point the way, insisting, "Don't worry, son, it's easy once you see the post office up ahead." Ryan would nod, thank them, and then walk off with a smirk, laughing under his breath. He convinced himself he was proving his point. But what he didn't realize was this: the more he dismissed these small acts of kindness, the colder his own heart was becoming. He was collecting evidence not to understand people, but to validate his bitterness. Still, in his mind, these tests weren't enough. He wanted something bigger, something that would really prove people's motives. So, one chilly evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ryan thought to himself, what if I pretend I actually need money? What if I play the role of someone desperate? Let's see how far people's kindness really goes. But what Ryan didn't expect was that the next stranger he tested wouldn't just offer him help, but a story that would shake him to his core. It was a cold Tuesday night. The streets were quieter than usual, the kind of evening where most people rushed home to escape the chill in the air. Ryan zipped his jacket up to his neck, his hands tucked deep into the pockets. Tonight, he was ready to take his experiment to the next level. This time, he wouldn't just fake losing a wallet or dropping groceries. No, tonight he wanted to see if someone would hand over money. If people were really as kind as everyone claimed, surely they wouldn't mind helping a young man get home, right? He wandered aimlessly for a while until he spotted a middle-aged man walking slowly down the sidewalk. The man carried himself with a calm dignity, though his clothes were plain. A worn jacket, slacks that had clearly seen better days, and shoes scuffed from years of use. His hair was peppered gray, and he had the tired eyes of someone who had lived through a lot. Perfect, Ryan thought. Someone like him will probably just give me a couple of bucks and keep walking. Ryan approached him, putting on his best performance of desperation. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice trembling slightly. I lost my wallet and I need to catch the last bus home. Could you possibly spare a few dollars?" The man looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. Ryan shifted nervously, worried maybe the man could see through his lie. But then, the man slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and handed Ryan a $10 bill. Ryan blinked, surprised. He expected a couple of coins at most. Thank you, really. I appreciate it." But instead of walking away, the man gave him a small, knowing smile. "It's a cold night," he said gently. "There's a diner just down the block. Why don't you go get yourself something warm to drink while you wait for the bus? Coffee helps when the world feels heavy." Ryan froze. He hadn't expected this. Most people in his little tests had helped quickly and then moved on. But this man, who introduced himself as Daniel, wasn't rushing. He stood there, his eyes kind, his voice soft, as though he genuinely cared. "Look," Daniel continued, "I don't have much, but I know what it feels like to be stranded. Years ago, I was in your shoes. I had lost everything: my job, my apartment, my dignity. There were nights I didn't even know where I'd sleep. If it weren't for the kindness of strangers, I don't know if I'd still be here." Ryan's smirk faltered. For a moment, guilt pricked at him. He could see the sincerity in Daniel's eyes. This wasn't a man trying to show off or look good in front of others. This was someone who knew suffering, who understood what it meant to need help and to receive it. But Ryan quickly shoved the guilt aside. He nodded stiffly, pocketed the money, and forced a half smile. "That's kind of you, sir. I'll make sure to pay it forward someday." Daniel's smile deepened. "That's all I ask. Kindness has a way of circling back, good or bad. Remember that, son." As Daniel walked away into the night, Ryan stood there, staring at the $10 bill in his hand. For the first time in his little experiment, he didn't feel like laughing. Instead, a quiet unease settled in his chest. Still, he shook his head, muttering under his breath, he probably just wanted to feel good about himself. He tried to convince himself that was all it was. But deep down, Ryan couldn't shake the look in Daniel's eyes. The way his voice carried not pity, but genuine understanding. For the first time, Ryan wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. But soon, Ryan would find himself in a situation where the tables were turned. And this time, his desperation would be real, and no one would be quick to believe him. A few days passed since Ryan's encounter with Daniel. He still had that $10 bill folded in his wallet, and every time he saw it, he felt something gnaw at him. He told himself it didn't matter, that Daniel was just another man who wanted to play the hero. But late at night, when the world grew quiet, Ryan couldn't forget his words. Kindness has a way of circling back, good or bad. Remember that, son. Ryan pushed the thought aside. But soon, life would force him to remember those very words, in the harshest way possible. It happened on a Thursday night. Ryan had stayed late at work, finishing reports his boss dumped on him at the last minute. By the time he got into his car, the parking lot was almost empty. The cold wind rattled through the bare trees as he started the engine. He drove for about 20 minutes before he noticed it, a strange noise coming from under the hood. At first, he ignored it, turning up the radio to drown it out. But then, smoke began to rise from the front of the car. Ryan's heart sank. He pulled over onto the shoulder of a dimly lit road. "Great, just great," he muttered, slamming the steering wheel. He popped the hood, and as soon as he opened it, steam hissed out into the night. His car was dead. Completely dead. He reached into his pocket for his phone, but when he pressed the button, nothing happened. The screen was black. He had forgotten to charge it after work. Now, Ryan was stranded. No phone. A broken-down car. On a quiet stretch of road where almost no one passed by. His frustration slowly turned into panic. After waiting for nearly an hour, headlights finally appeared in the distance. Desperate, Ryan waved his arms as the car slowed down and pulled over. A man rolled down the window, eyeing him cautiously. "Hey, my car broke down," Ryan said quickly. "Do you think you could give me a lift to the nearest gas station? Or maybe just let me use your phone?" But the man shook his head immediately. "Sorry man, not falling for that." Ryan blinked. "What? No, I'm serious. My car's right there." The driver frowned. "I've heard this one before. Guys like you pretend to need help just to scam people. Not interested." And with that, he rolled up the window and drove off, leaving Ryan standing in the cold, stunned. Minutes later, another car approached. Ryan rushed over, knocking on the passenger window. A woman cracked it open slightly, her eyes wary. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Please, my car broke down. My phone's dead. I just need a ride or a call for a tow truck." But the woman shook her head firmly. "I'm sorry, I don't trust it. There are too many scams out here." She drove off, leaving Ryan in the exhaust fumes, his chest tightening with dread. One rejection after another followed. Every person he begged for help looked at him with suspicion, dismissing his words before he could finish explaining. Finally, one man pulled over just long enough to sneer. "Guys like you ruin it for the people who really need help. Why don't you stop trying to con folks and get a real job?" Then he sped away, his taillights disappearing into the dark. Ryan stood frozen on the side of the road, his throat dry, his hands trembling. For the first time in his life, he was experiencing what it felt like to really need help and to be denied. The irony crushed him. His little tests had been nothing more than lies. But now, when he finally needed someone's genuine kindness, no one would believe him. He sat on the curb, his head in his hands, the cold biting at his skin. For the first time, he remembered Daniel's story in full detail. The way his voice had softened when he spoke about strangers saving his life. The way his eyes carried pain, but also hope. And now, Ryan understood. By abusing kindness, he hadn't just hurt himself. He had contributed to a world where people were afraid to trust, where real cries for help were drowned out by suspicion. But just when Ryan thought he would spend the night stranded and forgotten, someone finally stopped. Yet this time, the help would come with a condition, and a painful reminder that trust, once broken, is never freely given back. The night grew colder, and Ryan's hope grew thinner with every passing car that sped by without stopping. His breath came out in shaky white clouds as he sat on the curb, hugging his knees to stay warm. For the first time, he felt the sting of real desperation. A sting he had never known when his so-called experiments were nothing more than a cruel game. He thought about calling Chris, but his phone was still dead. He thought about walking, but the nearest gas station was miles away, and the road was lined with nothing but shadowy trees and silence. Ryan had always believed he was in control, but tonight he felt powerless. Just as he began to lose hope, headlights approached slowly from the distance. The car slowed down, and Ryan scrambled to his feet, waving frantically. To his surprise, the driver actually pulled over. A man in his 40s rolled down the window, his face cautious. "You all right, buddy?" he asked. Ryan swallowed hard. "Please, my car broke down. My phone's dead. I've been out here for hours. I just need to use a phone or get a ride to the nearest gas station." The man hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "How do I know you're not just scamming me?" Ryan froze, his mouth opening but no words coming out. How could he convince this man he was telling the truth? How could he prove he wasn't the very thing he had pretended to be so many times before? "I'm not," Ryan stammered. "I swear. My car's right there, look." He pointed to the smoke-stained hood on the shoulder. His voice cracked. "I'm not lying. Please." The man sighed heavily, gripping the steering wheel. "You sound just like the guys who walk up to me at the gas station asking for a few bucks for a bus ride." Ryan's stomach twisted. Those were his words. The same script he had used on Daniel. Now they came back like a mirror reflecting his shame. Desperation overwhelmed him. "I know people use scams. I know because I was one of them." The words tumbled out of him before he could stop. "I tested people. I pretended to need help when I didn't. I thought kindness was fake. But tonight I actually need it. Please. I don't deserve it, but please." The man studied him for a long, tense moment. Finally he said, "All right, I'll help you. But only if you can prove your story. Show me your car." Relieved, Ryan led the man over to the broken-down vehicle, explaining what happened. After checking under the hood, the man nodded. "Looks like your radiator's shot. You're not driving this anywhere tonight." The man pulled out his phone. "I'll call you a tow truck. But listen," his voice grew stern. "Guys like you, the ones who fake being stranded or desperate, they ruin it for people who actually need help. That's why no one trusts anymore. You understand that?" Ryan lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I do. More than you know." As the tow truck arrived and Ryan climbed inside, his heart was heavy with shame. He thought of Daniel again. The man who gave him money without hesitation, who shared a piece of his own painful story. Ryan remembered how easily he brushed off that kindness, how quickly he laughed it away. Now he finally understood. Kindness wasn't weakness. It wasn't fake. It was trust. And trust was fragile. Once broken, it could take years, or even lifetimes, to rebuild. That night, as Ryan rode in the passenger seat of the tow truck, he made a silent promise to himself. If he ever had the chance, he would make things right. But how could Ryan make things right? Could he ever face Daniel again, the man whose kindness he abused? Or was it too late to rebuild the trust he had broken? The next few days weighed heavily on Ryan. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the memory of that night stranded on the road, the looks of suspicion, the harsh words, the gnawing shame that followed him home like a shadow. At work, he found himself staring blankly at his computer screen, Daniel's words echoing in his mind. Kindness has a way of circling back, good or bad. Ryan knew he couldn't move forward without making things right. But the question was, how? How could he possibly face Daniel, after lying to him, after pocketing his kindness and laughing behind his back? Still, Ryan couldn't ignore it. So one Saturday morning, he walked the same streets where he first met Daniel, hoping fate might guide him. He asked shopkeepers if they knew him, described his appearance to a local cafe owner. Eventually, a clerk at the corner market said, "Yeah, I know Daniel. He comes by in the mornings, usually around 8, picks up his coffee and newspaper." Ryan thanked him and returned the next day. And there he was, Daniel, sitting on a bench outside the small diner, sipping coffee from a paper cup. His shoulders looked weary, but his face carried that same calm kindness Ryan remembered. Ryan's chest tightened. His feet felt heavy as he approached. "Daniel?" he said softly. The older man looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly before recognition set in. "You're the young man who needed bus money the other night." Ryan swallowed hard, pulling the folded $10 bill from his pocket. His hands trembled as he held it out. "I need to tell you the truth. That night, I lied to you. I didn't lose my wallet. I wasn't stranded. I was testing people's kindness because I thought it was fake." His voice cracked. "I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I don't deserve your kindness, but I want to return what you gave me." For a moment, Daniel just stared at him. The silence felt endless. Ryan's heart pounded. He was prepared for anger, for disappointment, for Daniel to walk away. But instead, Daniel took a slow breath and set his coffee cup down. He didn't take the money right away. Instead, he looked Ryan in the eye and said, "Son, kindness isn't something to be tested. It's something to be honored." Ryan felt tears sting his eyes. He lowered his head. "I know that now. That night, I needed help for real, and no one believed me. I realized I was the reason people don't trust anymore. I ruined the very thing I was trying to disprove." Daniel reached out, gently pushing Ryan's hand back toward him. "Keep it. Not because you deserve it, but because it's a reminder. A reminder that kindness doesn't lose its value because some people abuse it. It only loses its value when we stop giving it." Ryan blinked, stunned. "Why would you still after what I did?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because someone once gave me kindness when I didn't deserve it either. If they hadn't, I might not be here. And I'm not about to let one man's mistake stop me from continuing that chain." Ryan's chest tightened, but this time it wasn't guilt, it was something deeper. Something that humbled him completely. He nodded slowly, slipping the bill back into his wallet, not as money, but as a symbol. A weighty reminder that kindness was a trust, a gift never to be mocked again. That day, Ryan walked away a changed man. And not long after, he found himself in a situation where he could prove it. At a bus stop, a young boy dropped his backpack, spilling books and papers onto the sidewalk. Without hesitation, Ryan knelt down, gathered the papers, and handed them back with a genuine smile. "Here you go, buddy." The boy grinned and said, "Thanks, mister." And for the first time, Ryan didn't question it. He didn't analyze it. He simply felt the warmth of knowing he had honored the very thing he once doubted. But the story doesn't just end with Ryan's change. Because the true power of kindness is not what it does in one moment, but how it spreads, often in ways we may never see. Ryan's story didn't end with one apology, or even one act of kindness at a bus stop. In truth, it was only the beginning. Because change isn't proven in a single moment. It's proven over time, in the choices we make when no one else is watching. From that day forward, Ryan lived differently. He carried Daniel's words with him everywhere he went. Kindness isn't something to be tested. It's something to be honored. When he saw a coworker struggling to carry files at the office, Ryan didn't hesitate, he stepped in and helped. When his elderly neighbor needed her trash bins pulled to the curb, Ryan rolled them down with a smile. At first, these moments felt small. But over time, Ryan began to realize something powerful. The same way his cynicism had spread negativity, his kindness could spread hope. And slowly, the guilt that once weighed him down was replaced by a quiet peace, the peace of knowing he was living with integrity. But Ryan never forgot that cold night on the roadside. The sting of being dismissed. The ache of hearing, "Guys like you ruin it for the ones who really need help." That memory stayed with him as a permanent reminder that abusing kindness doesn't just hurt the giver, it poisons the world for everyone. Daniel was right. Trust is fragile. And every time we lie, manipulate, or take advantage of someone's good heart, we don't just break trust with that person, we weaken the thread that holds communities together. We make the world colder. We make kindness harder to believe in. Yet, the opposite is also true. When we honor kindness, when we give without expecting anything in return, when we help without judgment, we keep that fragile thread strong. We create a ripple effect that goes farther than we'll ever know. Maybe the boy Ryan helped at the bus stop went home that day and decided to help his younger sister with her homework, instead of teasing her. Maybe the woman at the cafe, who once paid for his sandwich, was inspired to do even more good after seeing someone else smile because of her. And maybe Daniel himself, who once received kindness in his darkest hour, had no idea how his decision to help a stranger that night would change the course of another man's life forever. Because that's the power of kindness. It doesn't stop with one act. It multiplies. It travels from hand to hand, heart to heart, until someday it circles back when we need it most. Ryan learned this the hard way. But he also learned that it's never too late to change. It's never too late to rebuild trust, to honor kindness instead of mocking it. And maybe, just maybe, his story can remind us all of something simple but life-changing. That kindness is not weakness. Kindness is trust. And when we honor it, we don't just make life easier for one person, we make the world a warmer place for everyone. Moral of this story: kindness is not something to be tested or taken for granted. Every time we exploit it, we make the world a little colder, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who truly needs help. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it takes so much to rebuild. But when we honor kindness, when we give it freely and respect it deeply, we don't just change someone else's life, we change our own. Because in the end, kindness is never weakness. Kindness is strength. What you put into the world always finds its way back to you. The question is, when it does, will it be regret or gratitude? If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that kindness is never wasted. Subscribe for more powerful, life-changing stories. And together, let's keep kindness alive, one heart at a time. And remember, we're not just telling stories. We're changing lives.